The time is now, everyone. Our brackets are here. We're just about 60 hours away from the start of the NCAA tournament. Carson, it's the best time of the year.
It really is, Adam Gotkin. We got two juicers in this one. We got two former No Pulp APs, plus Dan Shalam and Max Gifford coming up the show.
It should be a ton of fun. We've got 60 minutes of bracket breakdown. It's going to be a great time. You don't want to go anywhere. No Pulp starts right now.
Kansas State has been on fire this year.
Missouri is one of the most fraudulent teams in college basketball.
And it was proved
They're not going to fire him. He's the best player in program history.
Side to Lawrence for the win! Yes! He got it!
She is the Shohei Ohtani of college softball. This is a team that's potentially going to be a top 10 team in the country.
How you feeling? I'm excited to win the juicer.
LSU has captured its very first national championship.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome into No Pulp. I'm Adam Gotkin alongside Carson Fowler. We've got an hour of bracket breakdown ahead. We'll give you our entire men's and women's brackets. I mean, you can't ask for anything more than this, can you?
I mean, it's January, it's February, March, Izzo, and it goes on, and we sleep in May, like John Ross
Yes,
says.
we sleep in May. No time to sleep right now because it is time to talk about the tournament and a big story coming into this tournament, the SEC with one of the best seasons that a conference has ever had. 14 teams into the tournament from the Southeast Conference. The ACC with just
Arguably the best
4
year that it's ever had.
Yeah, and you look at the ACC with just 4. The Big East with just 5. The SEC completely took over this year.
I mean, Gotkin, how the mighty have fallen, where the ACC was even 5 years ago today. Now they get 4 teams into the ACC. It's their worst mark since 2014. They're going up with the Mountain West.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, not good for the ACC, but I mean, 14 teams, most ever for a conference. That beats 11 from the Big East back in 2011. And a big reason for it is the best of the best are so good in the SEC. They've got a number of 1 seeds. You have Auburn and Florida. They also are joined by Duke and Houston at that 1 line. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see teams that all have 3+, 5 losses in Auburn as 1 seeds, but these are all really, really good teams. This has been such an incredible season, and the top teams have been incredible.
Yeah, Adam, I think the conversation was whether Auburn would stay at that number 1 overall seed line, having lost in the semifinals to Tennessee, and then Tennessee and Florida going at it. I think people would have thought that Florida would have grabbed the number 1 overall seed line. You come in second in the best conference in college basketball. You also win the conference championship of the best conference in college basketball. Why wouldn't they be the number 1 overall seed? And you know who would agree with me? Our sports director, Avin.
I bet he would. That was really the main conversation throughout the entire last couple days when it came to the 1 seeds.
Absolutely.
Is Auburn going to drop back at all? But the reason they stayed number 1 overall is because they were the best team in the country throughout the entire season, really up until the final week when they had already locked in the number 1 seed in the SEC tournament. So it didn't really matter that much. But yeah, as you said, it was that Florida or Tennessee. Really, whoever won the SEC tournament was going to get that final 1
seed. Yeah,
and
Adam, you mentioned the stumbles that Auburn had towards the end of the regular season. 3 out of their last 4 games were losses. Granted, they were all the ranked teams, but it's March. You're playing ranked teams every weekend, and we've got a lot more to talk about on the show. The bubble was a big conversation as well. I know you and I had discussions before the show about teams that probably shouldn't have gotten in and some teams that should. The bubble this year officially, Texas, Xavier, North Carolina, and San Diego State, one of those Mountain West squads we talked about, but the 4 left out, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio State, and Boise State. Gotkin, who did you think deserved to get in out of that last 4 in?
You know what? I think that this was a pretty uncontroversial bubble compared to some years. There was really one team that I think got a lot of people angry, and it's the one that I think they got right the most. and that's the North Carolina Tar Heels. It's not necessarily about the team specifically.
I want to hear
it's more
I want to hear
of
your
a
explanation
philosophy
here.
thing.
Okay.
I think the fact that North Carolina played the 5th hardest non-conference schedule in the country and played those teams so well, they deserve credit. Kansas, Michigan State, Auburn, Alabama, Florida, they all played close games against, and they beat UCLA.
Okay,
that deserves credit.
I understand playing the games, but you gotta win the games.
Yes.
1-12 versus quad 1? Come on.
Yes, but at the same time, they actually tried to play good teams compared to what we saw in past years of the Big 12, where we would hear, well, these teams' net rankings are so good because they beat up on so many bad teams. They beat a bunch of random squads like, I don't know, Rider University by 50 points, and because of that, the Big 12 would get so many teams in. North Carolina actually scheduled hard, and because of that, they got rewarded for it.
Didn't help. It probably didn't help that their AD was the chairman of the selection committee.
Maybe it had an impact.
My team is Texas. 6 quad 1 wins, 19 wins total. They played themselves in to March Madness, rather. They had 2 wins in the SEC tournament and a big win over Vanderbilt, who's in the field. For me, Texas is the team that deserved. I think they're actually the only team on the bubble line. I think you could have made a case for Boise State, Indiana, and West Virginia, which we'll talk about later, of those 3 teams getting into March Madness. The 3 teams outside of Texas had a combined 5 quad 1 wins, San Diego State having 3 of those. So Xavier and UNC only having quad 1. What's the point of even using the metric that is the net rankings if we're not going to actually utilize it when we do our selections?
So neither of us really have that many things that we disagree with the teams that got in. I mean, both these teams, top 40 in the net ranking, they both had pretty good records. North Carolina up to 22 wins usually in the ACC.
Absolutely.
That would get you like a 4 or a 5 seed. But this year, I think that these are normal bubble teams. 8-0 against quad 2 isn't bad for North Carolina. But there are some teams that did not make it in that are very unhappy. Something that is understandable. Of course, you are not happy if you don't make it in. What team do you think got snubbed, Carson?
Yeah, for me, it's Boise State.
Okay.
The committee has liked the Mountain West for the past few years, so I would have assumed that the team that went to the Mountain West Championship, obviously they lost to Colorado State, who really was their Achilles heel this year. They lost to Colorado State 3 times. But they've won 11 of their last 14 games, 2 of which came against the best team in the conference in New Mexico. They beat a really good Utah State team and San Diego State. I'm super surprised they didn't get into the field.
Here's my thing with Boise. You lose to Boston College and Washington State in the non-conference.
But that was the beginning of the season.
But those games, the first week of the season, count just as much as the conference championship do.
I
Every
totally agree
game
with that,
counts the same amount.
Not that we're talking about college football here, but if Ohio State loses in week 1 versus week 11 2 years ago when it wasn't the expanded college football playoff, they're not getting in.
No,
you know what I mean?
But the committee says that those games at the start matter just as much, which is why I
Which
think
is totally
that
understandable.
West Virginia got absolutely jobbed and that the Mountaineers should have been in the NCAA tournament.
I was about to ask, who's your team?
You go back to Maui. They beat Gonzaga and Arizona. This team beat Kansas and Iowa State in conference. 6 wins against top 50 teams this year. West Virginia was incredible all season. Just did not make it in. The Big 12 did not get the respect this year that it did in the past, and they just got hurt at the end. It was an old Big 12 team in Texas that got in over them.
And I think for West Virginia, it was a win and in situation against a horrible Colorado squad.
Can't lose to Colorado.
You can't lose to the worst team in the Big 12 in your conference tournament. I think you win that game and you're in. You get to 20 wins. You're 20 and 15 at that point, or 2013 rather. You had 6 quad 1 wins, more than a good majority of the field. Look there, 6 quad wins. You're 4 and 3 against quad 2. But what's not up on that screen? No bad losses, which is why I totally agree with you when I believe that West Virginia was a really good basketball team. And not to mention, they've played this season without Tucker DeVries.
Yes, which is a very big injury. He was the star
Which they
at
said
Drake
was
last
the reason
season.
they're not in the tournament,
He's
which
been out
is
since December.
ridiculous.
It is, but those net rankings, which you just saw, 50s and the 40s again. North Carolina, almost top 30. I think that the Tar Heels should have been, and I think we're going to hear a little bit more about North Carolina later on because, oh boy, we have got about 50 minutes left in show, and we have got so many things to get to. Our entire bracket, yes, every pick throughout the entire tournament. Don't go anywhere. No Pulp rolls on.
Welcome to my house. Lately, not my happy place. Everybody's pretty tired of each other. The parents were not themselves. My little brothers were morphing into small creatures. The walls were closing in. Clearly, a case of too much family, too close, 24/7. And there's a lot of that going around right now. If this sounds like your house, try going someplace new. YourLifeYourVoice.org. You'll find lots of ideas to help you handle the family stresses of being confined to close quarters. YourLifeYourVoice.org. It might not get you out of the house, but it could help you find a little more breathing room.
Welcome back, guys. No Pulp, Adam Gotkin, Carson, Fowler with you. The bracket was released on Sunday, and we start in the South region with Auburn as the #1 overall seed. We're going to have the bracket up here behind us, and we're going to break it down here in a minute. Gotkin, who do you like?
Yeah, this is, I think, a really interesting region. Of course, Auburn, the #1 overall seed in the tournament, and I think that they absolutely got the easiest bracket. We start off, I think this is a very interesting game.
The
First
Louisville
game of the
Creighton
tournament.
game. I totally agree.
In Lexington, Kentucky. I'll give you this crazy stat. Louisville, yes, that is kind of a home game. They're 4-18 all time at Rupp Arena. So yes, a home game, but they always lose at the Rivals Arena. I think that Louisville is going to get in its own head. I got Creighton here.
Gotkin, I got Louisville here, so we're going to disagree. But let's move down to the bracket. Michigan, UC San Diego has been a very popular choice as an upset pick, and I understand that you really like UC San Diego.
I do. I think that this UCSD team is so good in the way that it's able to control the ball and take the ball away. They lead the country in turnover margin. You compare that to Michigan, one of the worst teams in the country when it comes to turning the ball over. So because of that, I think that really helps out UCSD in this game. I also think that this UCSD team is very experienced, not necessarily in Division I, but at Division II. They have so many transfers who played in that D2 tournament, and I know it's a step down, but tournament basketball is tournament basketball, and I think this team is ready.
Personally, I totally disagree with you. Sorry. Michigan is going to destroy them. They should be a 3 or 4. They just won probably the second best conference in college basketball, about that being the Big Ten. I'm surprised they're a 5. They got maybe one of the best front courts in college basketball in Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, who just won the Big Ten most outstanding player in the tournament. I think Michigan moves on. I think they play Yale in the next round in a reunion of Danny Wolf's former team.
My one thing, though, with Danny Wolf, he turns the ball over a lot. We continue to go down. Pretty interesting as it gets to the bottom. Again, these are the weaker teams at the bottom of the bracket. Ole Miss, solid, not great. I think Iowa State's really interesting, but
without
one injury.
Kelshin Gilbert.
That's going to be really interesting to see how they do without the injury. Then you get to the bottom here, a bunch of very interesting teams. So, Carson, what do we got?
Okay, so here's my bracket. I got Auburn moving on against Alabama. I got Louisville, Michigan, Yale, Ole Miss, Iowa State, New Mexico, and Michigan State. I'm a big fan of the Spartans, which is why I have them in the Sweet 16, and I have Michigan here. I want to note something, though. Donovan Deegan, a player to watch from New Mexico, 20 points per game, the player of the year in the Mountain West, should be a really good point to watch against Michigan State because they don't have a great defender outside of Jay Nakins and Jaden Resiston. But Gotkin, let's look at your bracket.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different than you. Again, I got UCSD going all the way, a team still new to Division I. So they don't even have a logo in our system.
But I'm looking here.
Yeah, I have Iowa State beating Ole Miss. I think, yes, there's the injury, but Iowa State was one of the best teams in the country at the start of the season. Yes, they've struggled a little bit down the stretch, but TJ Otzelberger is a great coach. I love his muscles, love watching him on the sideline. He's huge. That's physicality. That's going to help his team out. So this is a really interesting region, but we've got to go because we've got so many other regions to get to. The West, one that I think is really interesting. You've got Florida against the reigning national champion at the top. And then as this goes on, so many incredible storylines. This might be my favorite region in the entire bracket.
I think this is the most difficult region, and which was so surprising because they called it the easiest region from the top 4 seeds. St. John's, Kansas, Arkansas at the bottom is super interesting in Providence.
The coaches
3
that you have here?
legendary coaches. For me, though, let's talk about Maryland, a team that I believe is much better than a 4 and a team that I know
5.
you want to talk about.
You got the Crab 5 there, the 2 bigs. You talked about Michigan's 2 bigs. I think that Maryland's might be better. Derek Queen, a potential top 10 pick this year, and Julian Reese, the brother of Andrew Reese.
Of course.
He's been there for 4 years. He's a stud. And then they've got a couple transfers who have been exceptional this year. Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel, Jacoby Gillespie, all great 3-point shooters. I think that this Maryland team is so good. Best starting 5 in the country, you can argue. The issue is they don't have a bench.
Yeah, I think they have the best starting line in terms of points, but aside from that, they really struggle. Let's talk about Florida. Yeah. Again, we talked about it earlier in the first block of the show. I believe they should have been the #1 overall seed, but I think they're one of the most complete teams in all of college basketball. Alex Connon, Thomas Hoke, Elijah Martin, Will Richard, all these guys contribute to all facets of the game. They score so much, and they play really well in transition. But Gotkin, let's get to your picks.
All right, so here we go. My first round, I do have Florida moving on, of course, against the reigning national champs last year. I think that this one's going to be really interesting. I do have Drake beating Missouri. Drake's head coach came from Northwest Missouri. I think that there's a little bit personal there. You know what? Sometimes things don't fully make sense. That's just the NCAA
And you
tournament.
have Texas Tech moving on despite no Darian Williams or Chase McMillian?
I don't think UNC Wilmington is that good at all. So let's continue on now here to the Sweet 16. And I have Drake again winning. Drake knows how to win. Ben McCollum, their old coach, won 4 national championships at Division II. He knows how to win. And then other than that, I have chalk. But I got Drake, the 11 seed in the Sweet 16.
And for my bracket, Adam, I've got Florida moving all the way. We're pretty much chalk.
1 through
I know.
4.
And I still have Texas Tech here. I have a hard time believing that outside of Mark Mitchell, Missouri really has a lot going on. But let's talk to someone who's got maybe even a bit more ball knowledge than we do. Luke Burgess, my friend. Welcome to the show. What double-digit seed do you believe out of the men's bracket can make a deep run?
Well, Carson, I appreciate you being so complimentary of my ball knowledge. I think you know a lot over there, too. But I think it's got to be UNC. I really like the way that they finished the season. Their only 2 losses in the last month were both to Duke. And, of course, the controversial free throw line violation that ended it in the ACC tournament. That easily could have gone the other way. The other thing, only 3 losses all season for this squad that weren't the teams that are in the tournament. And they've been playing their best basketball right as we've got up to tournament time. I think this team has a lot of potential. They've got good scores. Obviously playing in a weaker conference in the ACC this season. They got a lot of hate, but I certainly think that they can make a run. They've got the pieces to do it, and they've got the tradition as well, which I do think matters.
Well, that's controversial. We said how they were on the bubble and made it in. Usually teams in the first 4 end up going on runs. You think that they will. But when it comes to the first round, what matchup that we've talked about so far intrigues you the most, Luke?
Yeah, and you guys did hit on it for a moment. Guys, I think it's Louisville going up against Creighton. And Louisville is one of the most underseeded teams in the tournament. That's no secret. It's one of the main talking points really coming out of Selection Sunday. And I think that you're going to get a Creighton team that's fought really hard all season in a tougher Big East conference than maybe meets the eye. I think all the conversation has been about St. John's and the work that they've done this year, but the rest of this conference has some powerhouses, including the defending national champions in UConn. They've done a really good job.
Well, Luke, thank you so much. We'll hear from you more in just a little bit.
Sorry, Adam. Let's talk about the East region where Duke is the 1 seed, the ACC champion, and they did it without Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown, who John Shire says is the X factor on that squad, and a former Syracuse player out of CitrusTV. But Gotkin, what do you like in this bracket?
Yeah, that injury of Malik Brown is going to be really interesting. We'll see how much that plays an impact. I don't love any of these teams until really we get to VCU. I think that in general, in my opinion, this is the weakest bracket that we have. I don't like Oregon as the 5. I don't like Arizona as the 4. BYU I don't even love, but VCU's defense I think is great, and I think that they can go on a run in a region that really I don't like at all.
I got a quick note. I think Arizona is a wild card to be a deep run team. If Caleb Love can continue to play the way he's been playing.
Big if.
Also, just want to note, Akron's 4th leading scorer, Shema Scott, went to my high school. Just want to put it in there. But a team that I think is interesting is Vanderbilt. You talk about teams that are capable of big wins, and I believe it's Vanderbilt. You're 5-6 against ranked teams, but you're one of the few of the bottom of the SEC that beat Tennessee, Kentucky, A&M, Ole Miss, actually A&M twice rather, and Missouri. They're led by Jason Edwards, who's 19 points per game. And not to mention, I don't know if people know this, they have Vernon Carey's little brother.
Oh, all right. So what are you thinking for this bracket for the East? What we got, Carson?
I think coming. Sorry, I was waiting for it to come in. We got Duke, Baylor, Oregon, Arizona, VCU, Wisconsin, Vanderbilt, and Alabama. But what I'm going to take that's going to surprise people is Vanderbilt over Alabama. I think Alabama without Grant Nelson is vulnerable. They were absolutely obliterated by Florida in the SEC tournament. And another thing, really like Oregon. I think they could beat Duke. You'll find out later in the show if they do. I really like Nate Biddle, and I like Jake Schulstead.
Here's the thing. I don't love this Oregon team personally, and I've got them losing in the first round to Liberty. Again, that's just more of like I feel like there's going to be some chaos. Again, I said it before. I love this VCU team. They've got a couple guys from Utah State, a coach from Utah State, who are very experienced, very solid. It's an all-senior lineup. I love this VCU team to go to the Sweet 16. Other than that, chalk. So we've got just one more region to get to, down to the Midwest, the bottom right. Again, it's another interesting one. I think this is also a bit weaker. I think that the left side of the bracket was a lot stronger than the right.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 2 games under the Houston game, Gonzaga, Georgia, and Clemson, McNeese State. I think Clemson is extremely underseeded. I believe they were disrespected by the committee, a team that went to the semifinals and won 18 ACC conference games. But also Gonzaga.
I love Gonzaga.
I'm a big fan of Gonzaga, and I think you and I are going to agree on something here in a second. But they were a top 10 team in the net and in KenPom and somehow landed on the 8 line, make it make sense.
Number 9 in KenPom right now, and an 8 seed. It makes absolutely no sense. All of the metrics.
It's called SEC bias, Adam.
I guess it is. All the metrics love this Gonzaga team. Very experienced. You get Graham EK back from last year, Ryan Nemhart. I mean, it's just such a good, talented
It's a team full of guys, and they're one of the best teams at distributing the basketball. They also scored at the best, and I believe they're 3rd in the country.
Yeah, their field goal percentage over 50% as well. As we get down to the rest of this bracket, a lot of big-name teams. I think it's going to be a fun bracket overall. So what do we got here for our Midwest picks? I have High Point beating Purdue. I don't trust Purdue this year. Last year they had Edey. That was just about it. Again, let's go on one more. You teased it before. What do we got? Houston, Gonzaga. I got the Zags moving on. Number 9 in the country in KenPom, an 8 seed. I don't love this Houston team. I do agree with you that Clemson's decent. I have them moving on. And then I got this Kentucky, Tennessee, and SEC matchup in the bottom.
It's also a Houston team that may be without Juwan Roberts for the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. But let's talk about my bracket. I also have Gonzaga winning that game. I think Gonzaga is dangerous. They've gone to 9 straight Sweet 16s. Mark Few is among the best coaches in college basketball, and Clemson, another extremely disrespected team in college basketball. Chase Hunter, Ian Shefflin, Victor Locken, tons of good players. I think that trio is among the best in college basketball. And then I got Kentucky over Illinois and Tennessee over Utah State, although I do like Ian Martinez. But we've got Luke back with us again up on your screen. And Luke, of what we've seen so far, what is the most competitive region in the tournament? I feel like we've got an answer, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think I'm right in step with you guys. It's got to be the West. It's so dang good. You look at some of the teams in this region of the bracket: Florida, St. John's, UConn. That's the defending national champ. I know they're seeded a little bit lower. You also got Maryland. You guys just talked about how good Maryland is. Should be better than a 4 seed. Then you got Kansas and Arkansas. I mean, there are just a ton of really talented teams, but also, guys, a lot of well-coached teams. That's one of the things that stands out to me. I love where this conference is at, or where this region of the bracket, I should say, is at. I think you're going to see some great matchups. People are going to be talking about these games a lot.
Yeah, the coaches there are crazy. You got Sampson, Hurley, Willard. It's just unreal.
Matt Painter, Brad Brunell. I mean, the list goes on and on. Mick Cronin at UCLA.
It's crazy. So one big question for you, Luke. Who's going to be the national champion?
You know, Adam, I got to say Auburn. And that might be a little bit of a surprise pick because they had their weakest part of the season going into the tournament. And I know earlier I talked about how important it is to be hot with UNC going into the tournament. But Auburn was the best team in the country for the most amount of time this year. They've got a heck of an offense. No team in the country can stop them. And they limit the 3 really well as well, which I think is going to come in clutch maybe a little bit more than some people are talking about. They're not a great interior defensive team, but they allow a low percentage, below 30% on the season. I think Auburn definitely has a chance to make a run to the Natty.
Well, Luke, it's not a bad pick considering they are the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, I don't know how controversial that is.
Not super controversial. But when we come back, Dan Shalam and Max Gifford join Adam Gotkin in the Juicer. Stick around because No Pulp returns in a few.
Welcome back into No Pulp. We continue on with my favorite time of the show. It is the Juicer. We've got Max Gifford and Dan Shalam ready to go to battle. And we've got so many things to get to in this show that let's get right into this first Juicer. And Max, I'm going to go to you first with this first question. What number 1 seed do you think has the toughest path?
Yeah, Lou Burgess was just on here a couple seconds ago talking about how he thinks Auburn's going to win it all. But I think that they, as a 1 seed, are going to have the most difficult path to the Final Four and maybe even the championship as a whole. You're talking about a squad that has 3 teams in the top 10 in the net in those top 3 remaining seeds after Auburn. When you look at teams like Iowa State, Texas A&M, and Michigan State. And then that doesn't even mention the fact that their second round matchup is going to include 2 very underseeded teams in the runner-up in the ACC in Louisville and the runner-up in the Big East in Creighton. If Auburn is going to make a run in the Final Four, they're going to have to earn it, and losing 3 of your last 4 does not help their case.
Dan, what do we got?
Listen, it's going to be a war for Houston to get out of the Midwest. And here's why. You got Tennessee in there. You have Purdue going on. And you also, most of all, have Gonzaga. This is a team that Adam just mentioned might knock off Houston in the first round. And there's a reason why this team is hot right now, coming off that win against St. Mary's. They've been in the tournament 26 straight years, Sweet 16. 15 straight times. This is a squad that's going to attack Houston. They can play the slow style that the Cougars love to play, and it's going to be an upset if things go chalk. And even if they don't, Tennessee's waiting to nab you. Purdue's there, who made it to the national championship last year. It is just a gauntlet of teams for Houston to get out of the Midwest.
All right, well, I've got one of these teams going to the Sweet 16, and I've got another getting knocked out in the second round. So unfortunately, this guy wins. Houston has a tougher road, so you get the first point. But Max, don't worry. Question number 2 is worth 2 points, and I'm going to go to you first with this one. Which star player is going to let his team down this March?
Well, it's the kid from my home state of Missouri, although we don't claim him in the month of March. His name is Caleb Love. He comes from Arizona. I don't know if you've heard of him. And, well, he's become kind of a lightning rod of criticism in March. For a good reason, because in March, he stinks. Go back to that 2022 National Championship. This guy was 1 for 8 from 3 and 5 for 24 from the field. Then the guy goes to Arizona, shoots just 34% from the field and 20% from the three-point line in 3 games last year. That includes going 5 for 18 and 0 for 9 from 3 in that game against Clemson that Arizona lost, and that knocked them out of the tournament. So Caleb Love has really struggled in March, and for a guy that really shoulders a lot of the weight for his squad, you can't rely on him at this point in the season.
Another guy who shoulders the weight is Chaz Lanier from Tennessee. This is a guy who's only put up 23 points in his last 2 games. He's been Tennessee's guy all year long, 18 points per game, but things have been trending down as of late. And against big competition this year, really hasn't showed up. 10 points in the regular season against Auburn, 15 in the first loss to Kentucky, 10 in the second loss. The reason why I bring up the Wildcats, if Tennessee gets to the Sweet 16 and things chalk out, they play Kentucky. And simply put, Chaz Lanier does not show up against Kentucky, and they're going to lose. That's why Tennessee is, for me, not even getting past the Sweet 16. They're going to lose simply because of Chaz Lanier. Next leading scorer on the team only is averaging 13 points a game.
I disagree. I think that Caleb Love has so many times disappointed. Because of that, I have to go with him because, well, history does repeat itself so often. And so, Max, you go ahead 2-1. Question number 3. Worth 3 points, so the winner of this question will win the juicer. We're going to go the opposite way. What unknown player becomes a star this March? Dan, I'm going to you.
John Poulikitis out of Yale. Who else? This guy's a 3-point threat that absolutely dominates in the Ivy League, leads all scorers this season with just around 20 points per game. He's been clutch, and you might remember his name. He had 28 last year against Auburn, but was overshadowed by Jack Golke from Oakland. And so far this season, 25 plus in his last 2 games, had 23 against Purdue, 21 against Minnesota, 41% 3. And remember last year, Auburn ranked 2nd in the SEC for 3-point defense. Texas A&M is ranked 12th. That's 5th worst in the conference. He's going to dominate against the Aggies in the first round.
I'll raise you your Bulldog with 1 Bulldog more from Drake. I'm going Bennett Sertz from the Bulldogs. This is a guy who is a walking bucket, also from the state of Missouri. I just had to mention that. And in the Missouri Valley Conference this year, this guy put up maybe one of the most complete stat lines in college basketball. You're talking a guy that averaged just about 20 points a game, nearly 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and over 2 steals. Oh, and he also shot 60% from the field and nearly 40% from 3. And the thing I love about a guy like Sertz is that he doesn't need a big pocket to really shoot some of these big game threes. And that's what March is about. out, I think you can expect to see a guy like Bennett Surtz, like Mr. Adam Gotkin said, maybe in the One Shining Moment video, if Drake goes on a run.
Alrighty, well, I'm going to answer this one the way that I have pretty much all of them. I have one of these guys going to the Sweet 16. I've got another losing in the first round. So Bennett Surtz, I think, is going to be a star. Max Gifford wins the juicer. Congratulations, Max. So let's see where you sit right
I did
now.
bring a stress ball just in
No
case.
temper tantrum
Okay, no
this time.
temper
I don't want
tantrum.
your stress
Let's see
ball.
where you are in the standings. How about that? Number 3 right now, not too bad. Tied for first with that plus 4-point differential. But don't worry, everyone. We've got another juicer later on. But before we get there, we've got to show you our entire women's brackets. We've still got a bunch of time left here and no Pulp, so don't go anywhere. Show rolls on when we come back.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're back. Carson, Fowler, Adam Gotkin. You survived the juicer.
I know. I thought that with Max and Dan in there, I might not have made it. Honestly.
I saw the stress ball get pulled. I was a little nervous for you.
Yeah, me too. Dan threw that kind of hard. I thought it could have bounced back towards me. I was a little bit scared for a second.
But the show rolls on as we talk about it. But we broke down the men's bracket. Let's go to the women's bracket, and let's start in the first region in Spokane with UCLA, the Big Ten champion, who got over the hump that was USC. Actually, there are only 2 losses from the year. What do you like in this region?
I mean, I think different from the men, women's basketball, we don't see that many upsets. So,
the better teams win.
Yeah, we got to talk a lot more about these teams, and it's because there are so many 5-stars up and down. All of these top seeds. I think that UCLA is without a doubt the best team in this region with Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice. But the one team that I'm looking out for that is not a high seed is Harvard out of the Ivy.
Harmony
the
Turner.
Ivy League had 3 teams make it this year, and as you said, Harmony Turner is an absolute stud. She's averaged over 15 points every single year in college, averages over 20 points this year. You need stars to win games in March, and she's a star.
Adam, I think if there's a definition that sums up Harmony Turner, it's bucket getter. 30 points per game in the Ivy League tournament to get into March Madness, because they were that 3rd team that I'm not sure would have made it into March Madness had they not won the conference tournament. But like you mentioned, the Ivy League for the first time ever got 3 teams into March Madness, which is pretty cool.
It is. It's very cool. So let's see what we got here for region number 1. Let's get to our picks. Carson.
UCLA, you mentioned Lauren Betts, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and Kiki Rice, first team All Big Ten. 2 players. They might be the best forward guard tandem in the country.
I agree.
They're going to move on against a 16 seed UC San Diego, who you like in the men's side. Just
different on the women's side.
In my Sweet 16, I got UCLA versus Ole Miss and LSU.
Oh, versus Harvard all the way.
This is a team that has allowed 70 points or more only 5 times this year. I think they slow down NC State, make them play at their pace, and move on to the Sweet 16.
It's a big pick. Very rare that we see double-digit seeds, but I got it too. I do think that this is a really intriguing matchup, though, because we've got Kim Mulkey against this Harvard team. She is such an incredible coach. Flau'jae Johnson as well, of course, a star player for LSU. But I love it. We both have Harvard, the 10th seed. Why not? It's madness. Let's get some madness. So the South, we've got some interesting things. Moving on now down to the West, led by USC. Another really interesting bracket, and I'll tell you what, there's another double-digit seed that I really like, and that is Fairfield out of the MAC. This is the 2nd straight year that Fairfield has been an incredible team. Last year they won 30 games, but they lost by 30 in the NCAA tournament. This year, I think it's a little bit different, and I trust Fairfield. I do. Shout out Sam Fetterman.
Oh my God!
100 games. He saw
just
100
say
games
that
this
on
season,
CitrusTV.
and he loved
I'm
Fairfield.
talking about my double-digit seed, and I got Murray State. You're talking about 4 players that average 14 points or more, and they're led by Kalen Young, who averages 22 points per game. Murray State is the best scoring offense in the country, 87 points per game. I believe they're going to speed up teams. They play really well. They play really fast. Haley Pollock, Evan Ford, Ava Learn, all really good players. And they shoot it about 36% from 3 as a team. Not to mention, good matchup in my next round. My matchup, I won't spoil it yet. But another team that I like, UConn.
How can you not like UConn?
Paige Beckers. Can I say something really quick? Is it just me, or did UConn not get talked about enough this year?
Yeah, I think that Becker's injuries definitely played a part in that. Also, you have Azzy Fudd, who was out for a number of years. She is a superstar. She played incredible for that team a couple times earlier this season against South Carolina. She had a massive game. Sarah Strong, the freshman, probably the best freshman in the country. You can never doubt UConn. You can never doubt Gino Auriemma at the end of the day.
But I want to say something really quick. I want to make sure I get this right. They won 30 games. They went undefeated in conference play. Paige Beckers won the Big East Player of the Year, and they're the #1 team in the net, and you're a 2 seed. I think that's disrespectful, and you probably got one of the best 1 seeds.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Well, actually, they think they got disrespected.
Every team thinks that they got disrespected, so let's see what we got here. Region number 4, second round. Again, I said I like Fairfield. Other than that, all chalk here. Let's move on to the Sweet 16, and I've got all chalk. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that these are 4 really good teams. You have Kentucky, which is basically Virginia Tech last year. They were very good, and Oklahoma and UConn, both really good squads this year.
Gotkin, I've got some different things. Let's look at my bracket.
Oh,
I got
okay.
USC in the Sweet 16 as well. But I got Murray State going to the Sweet 16. I'm talking about a team that is going to outrun the Sooners. The Sooners average about 85 points per game, but Murray State, like I mentioned earlier, averages about 87. Also, I want to mention Regan Beers will be a really fun matchup for Caitlin Young. Great name. 2 really good forwards, and I think they make the Sweet 16. I think they beat Oklahoma. I think UConn gets there as well. You get USC, Kansas State, but we got another guy joining us on the show. Our own women's basketball beat reporter, Tyler Aitken. I'm sorry, we're not talking about Syracuse this year, TA, but what conference do you believe will have the most Sweet 16 teams?
I mean, I think it's a pretty easy answer. It's the SEC. And look, I know that's a conference that added 2 really good teams in Oklahoma and Texas from last year to this year, but the SEC in general is just a really deep squad. There's 16 teams seeded 1 through 4 in this bracket. 6 of them are from the SEC. 6 of those teams, the committee is saying, we expect them to get to the Sweet 16. It's by far the safest bet. You've got South Carolina, really good team. Kentucky, really good team. When you add in Oklahoma, when you add in Texas, it has to be the Southeastern Conference.
Doesn't really surprise me. Just like the men, the SEC great in women's basketball this year. Tyler, what bubble team are you looking at that could make a deep run? Again, we don't always see it in the women's tournament, but who are you thinking of?
Well, the Ivy League this year is pretty strong. So give me Columbia, one of the last 4 teams to get in. A team that won the Ivy League this year, which is a 3-bid league. Columbia just barely lost to Harvard in the last round of the Ivy League tournament, but throughout the year, they were awesome. Top 45 team in the net, top 10 rebounding team in the country, top 25 team at getting assists in the country. Now, the matchups aren't the greatest. I don't think Washington will be a problem in the first 4. I don't think West Virginia will be a problem after that. UNC Duke later in the tournament become a problem. But at the end of the day, you trust the team, not the matchup. And Columbia is a team I dream about.
I like it. I'm a fan.
Columbia out of the Ivy League.
Hey, we both like Harvard.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair. Let's go to Region 2, where South Carolina is the #1 overall seed. They won the SEC, beating Texas. Let's talk about some first-round matchups. Who do you like, Adam?
You know, I think that there's a lot of really interesting ones here. None really jump out to me. Honestly, the big thing with this is I think that this might be even better than the last region that we talked about in terms of the 1 and 2. In South Carolina and Duke, you have the SEC and the ACC. These are 2 star-studded teams at the top and bottom. Honestly, I think that it's a collision course. Everyone else in between doesn't really matter. I think you're losing to South Carolina or Duke no matter what if you make it that far.
Yeah, I agree with you. Duke played itself into the seed. They won 3 games in the ACC tournament, beating Louisville, Notre Dame, and NC State, who are all in the field. They're led by the ACC Rookie of the Year in Toby Fournier.
She's a stud.
She is a stud. I love Duke. I think they could easily come out of this region, but will they? We'll see. Let's move on to my bracket. We got South Carolina, Indiana, Alabama, Maryland, Columbia versus Washington.
Is you got Columbia here?
I do have Columbia.
Okay,
here.
all right.
North Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Duke. But here's where it gets interesting. In the Sweet 16,
interesting.
I've got the Cotton Road rivalry. And then I got Maryland, led by Shylan Sellers, super explosive player in South Carolina who's unreal. Let's go to your bracket, guys.
Maryland, UNC, and Duke. Shout out to the old ACC. I've got a basically similar, a little bit different. I've got West Virginia beating North Carolina. Other than that, though, 1, 2, and 4 also in it. So that's what I think for region number 4. Let's go to region number 3. I hate how that was region number. The region numbers don't make any sense in women's basketball. Just do it like the men. Whatever it is, region number 3. Another interesting one. You got a lot of Texas teams, top and bottom. You know, a team that I really think is interesting here is Ohio State. I love Ohio State's freshman point guard in Jelani Cambridge. I think that she is one of those players that you look at as a potential star. I think that they're even going to beat beat Texas in the Sweet 16. I think that Cambridge is going to be the next Paige Beckers, Juju Watkins, the player that you look at and say, this is a bona fide stud in college basketball. So for this reason, I'm looking at Ohio State in this region as my really team that kind of comes out of nowhere. Not nowhere because they're a 4 seed, but I do think that they're a bit of a surprise when you look at 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I think they will stumble to Texas eventually. But 2 teams I like out of the bottom, Notre Dame and TCU. TCU led by Haley Van Lith, who's kind of revitalized her career, and Notre Dame led by 3 really good guards, Sonia Citron, Hannah Hidalgo, and Olivia Jack Miles, rather. 2 really good teams on the bottom side. But let's look at your bracket.
I mean, of course, you can't forget about Hannah Hidalgo, one of the best players in the country. I've got basically all chalk. Creighton beating Illinois. Saw Creighton when they played Syracuse.
This is actually this is almost the definition of chalk.
Almost. Just one change. Moving on, does it stay the same? Yeah, it does. Chalk. 1, 2, 3, 4. One region has to be like this.
We'll find out if your team moves
right
on
here. I got Ohio State.
Well, let's go to mine. TCU. My team that I really like out of this bracket. I got them in the Sweet 16 against Notre Dame, who I also like. I got Texas and Tennessee. I'm pretty much chalk the same as you. I got this Nebraska upset. But we're going to bring our women's bracketologist back in again. Tyler Aitken, what bubble team do you believe can make a deep run in the tournament? You talked about some teams earlier.
Well, I already talked to you about Columbia. That's a team that can go deep in the tournament. But if I had to pick the biggest first-round upset, then I would probably go with 13-seeded Grand Canyon taking down 4-seeded Baylor. And listen, I get it. It's an Antelope squad that is in the tournament for the first time ever. But they have the most efficient offense in the entire country. 2nd in field goal percentage, 6th in three-point shooting. I'm not going to lie, Baylor is a good defensive team. But if Grand Canyon is shooting well, there's only so much Baylor can do to stop it. Grand Canyon undefeated, by the way, in neutral site games this year, 4-0. In the tournament, that matters. Give me Grand Canyon to potentially win the first round and more.
And more, I'd assume you don't have them winning every single game. So who do you have winning every single game this tournament and winning your national championship?
Well, I'm glad you guys earlier were talking about how much this team has been disrespected. It's UConn. Title number 12 for Gino Auriemma is coming. And listen, this is a team that, like you guys said, has been under-respected all year long. 30 wins, undefeated in the Big East. And everyone wants to talk about Paige Beckers, the star of the show. But how about, like you said, Adam, the best freshman in the entire country, Sarah Strong, top 5 freshman in terms of rebounding, blocks, and steals per game. She is the X factor. As long as she's on top of her game, it should be smooth sailing to the Final Four. And then when you rely on coaching, it's the best in the biz. Gino's getting title number 12. UConn's bringing it home.
All right. Don't hate it.
That's why we bring in the women's bracketologist, because he knows ball, Adam.
Yes, he does.
Well, when we come back, we've got another juicer. 2 former APs of no Pulp, Adam Hipsky and Drew Albaugh, getting ready to square off in their juicer debut. Stick around because No Pulp is back in just a few minutes.
Dad, they took over in my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back to No Pulp. Look who we've got. Adam Hipsky and Drew Albaugh. Hey boys, can we shake hands real quick? Because I feel like this is going to get a little dangerous.
It might.
He needed the green. He needed to be lucky today.
It is St. Patrick's Day.
It is.
That's bad. That's a bad omen, Adam. I don't know.
All right, enough of the omen and all of that. Whatever. Let's get to these questions. Which Wubba team is the hottest entering the tournament? Drew, let's go to you first.
I think it's an easy answer. I'm gonna go with UCLA. 30-2 on the season, and the 2 losses were against USC. And guess what? Just beat the Trojans in the Big Ten championship. How are they not the hottest team when the one team they couldn't beat was USC, and they just proved in the finale they could get it done? And not to mention, center Lauren Betts is electric. If you don't know the name, learn it. 20 rebounds, 10 points a game she averages. Absolutely electric stuff. Expect a hot run out of the gate for the Trojans.
All right. Adam, what say you, brother?
The question is, who is the hottest team right now in college basketball? And the answer is South Carolina. They play in the toughest conference in college basketball, and they've been absolutely dominant. Their last 5 games, 5 wins. All 5 of those against top 25 foes, and they've all been by double-digit margins. They've had a week to reset after going through that gauntlet, but they handled it with ease. There is not a team in the country playing better ball than USC right now.
UCLA beat South Carolina earlier this year.
It's about who's hot right now.
15 points.
Who's hot right now?
All right,
South Carolina.
okay.
Same teams.
All right, I'm going to mention one thing. Drew brought up a great point. The Achilles heel of this UCLA team has been USC. Why would them not getting over that hump not make them the hottest team in college basketball?
Because look at what South Carolina's done with their last 5 games. It's been dominant.
But so have they, which is why we're going with UCLA.
In the Big
the first
Ten?
point.
That's the right answer,
goes
too.
They had the most teams go to the March Madness this year. Was actually a record, 14 teams.
Let's look at the top.
Let's go to the next question. Enough out of you. Which women's basketball team will have the best first round performance? Drew, we'll go to you again first.
The best player, I'm going with Tania Latson. 25 points per game. That leads the country. That's not too bad. She also averages 2 steals per game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds for Florida State. And here's the kicker. Guess who the Seminoles are playing in round number 1? It's George Mason. And you might be thinking, hey, George Mason's not a bad team. And you're right, top 4 mid-major team in the bracket this year. But that's going to play into Tania Latson playing almost the entire game. The Seminoles are going to need Latson. She's going to play the whole game, unlike the 14, 15, 16 seeds of the world. And Latson is going to get it done. Expect a 30-piece out of Tania Latson.
I'm taking notes.
Okay, I'll tell you why it's not Tania Latson. You talk about that George Mason team. That's a top 30 defense. That's the best defense she's played. I'm going with Hannah Hidalgo, who, I'll tell you, she's averaged over 25 points per game in the non-conference. She's averaged over 25 points per game in conference play. It doesn't matter who Hannah Hidalgo is playing. It can be against the best of the best. And in this case, Stephen F. Austin, not even a top 100 defense in the country. She'll get it done. Hannah Hidalgo with ease in the round of 64.
She might not even play the second half. It's going to be a blowout.
She's ready for it. It doesn't even matter. She might not even need the first 20 minutes.
I'm going to bring this up really. This is easy. Drew, you made his argument. They're playing a pretty good mid-major in the first round.
She's going to play the whole game.
That's a good defense.
Hannah Hidalgo's got a good engine. She's going to play 30 minutes. Sure, she's going to play 30 minutes how she's done the entirety of this season. I'm going with Hannah Hidalgo. 2 points.
There we go.
To Adam Hipsky, who takes the lead after 2 questions. But we go to the next question. And this is going to go to you first, Adam. Which women's basketball team do you believe is going to bust some brackets? A Cinderella team, for lack of better words.
We've talked about double-digit seeds. You talked about Harvard. You talked about Murray State. I'm going with the Racers. The 11 seed. They're facing an Iowa team, but this is not an Iowa team with Caitlin Clark. Murray State, the top scoring offense in all of Division I. They're going to play Iowa, who's 196th in scoring defense. The Racers have won 10 in a row. They'll win the race to 90 points. That Iowa Hawkeyes offense can't keep up. Give me the Racers as the lone double-digit seed to make it out of the first weekend. They'll have Oklahoma in the round of 32. Just lost by 18 to that loaded South Carolina squad. All momentum has been halted on the Sooner side. Give me the Racers to advance out of the first weekend.
There we go. Drew, in your response.
And no one talks about a Cinderella team if they win just one game. You need to stack them up. Harvard. Harvard's my pick. The Crimson are going to get it done. Hermione Turner is absolutely electric. She averages close to 20 points a game, but it's not just that. You know the formula that every Cinderella team has? It's one star player and defense, because defense travels, and the Crimson are top 10 in the nation in points allowed per game, just 53 points per game, shoot 37% against the Crimson do other teams, and they're going to get it done against Michigan State and against NC State in round number 2. The Crimson are going to move on. This team is electric. Defense travels, and Hermione Turner, she's that good of a player.
10/7, maybe an upset, but 10/2.
Hold on. I want to ask an additional question for this question.
Let's do it.
What were some of Murray State's quality wins this year?
I know one for Harvard.
We'll get to you.
Yeah. No, I get it. Murray
Because
State's
I want to know if they're capable of winning big games.
They haven't showed it yet, but I'll tell you, they're ready.
Adam, that was not the answer I was looking for.
Do you want me to answer the question?
Who was Oakland's big win last year on the men's side? There are no Cinderellas that pick up big wins, because then it's not a Cinderella. It's not a Cinderella.
So he's got no answer. What were Harvard's good wins this year?
Indiana, who's a top 10 seed in the tournament this year, also beat a handful of different Power 5 teams. Murray State, I don't even know if they played a Power 5 team. So this for me is easy, Adam. It's Harvard all the way.
It's about the double-digit seed to bust brackets.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you who's gonna get the point here in a second. Everyone relax.
How can we relax?
Harvard was 5-5. Versus Quad 1 and Quad 2 this year. Do you know what Murray State was? 2-4. Harvard is going to win some games in March Madness. I talked about it in the earlier bracket breakdown. Drew Albaugh wins it 4-2.
Is a bracket buster.
I forgot an old tradition.
Talk about Cinderellas.
He brought
That's
his
a
own
Cinderella.
juice. Let's look at the juicer standings. Jordan Leonard at +4 sitting at the top. Oh, and look who's second. Wow. Max Gifford just behind. He just won just recently. Chloe Smars at 4, Adam Gotkin at 5, Austin Barrick at 6, and then Drew Albaugh.
Yes.
If you just wanted an easier matchup, if you just want an easier matchup in the playoffs, just say that.
I didn't even see that. That's actually awesome.
Hey,
and then
let's do
Andrew
this.
Sullivan at 8, Hudson Ridley and Ian Nicholas sit just outside. They're on the outside looking in, but that's our juicer standings right now.
That's where you wear green. That's where you wear green on the day you're meant to wear green. Good luck charm got me all the way through.
What do they say about stripes? It's like, don't wear stripes. I don't know when they. Don't wear stripes.
Never wear stripes again.
Never wear stripes again. Well, when we come back, Adam and I give our final 4 picks, and our national champions, No Pulp, returns after this.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome back into No Pulp. Just about to close up shop. Adam Gotkin alongside Carson Fowler in our new studio. We haven't even mentioned that, just with how
It really is
crazy
beautiful.
this show. I mean, we got these screens on both sides. This is incredible, isn't it?
Adam, what I like the most is during the juicer segment, we no longer have those 3 TVs vertical, so you actually see the beautiful jump back. But who made that?
Did you? Oh, that graphic.
Oh, a little
Great job
self-promotion.
made by Carson
Little
Fowler.
self-promotion.
All right,
Little
well,
self-promotion.
not too much self-promotion for you because we've got the Final Four and our national champions to get to. I'll go first. My Final Four for men's basketball, starting off in the South region. My Elite Eight matchup, I got Auburn against Iowa State. And for me, this one is pretty simple and too easy. I think that Auburn, even though they struggled down the stretch, is the best team in the country. Those losses came after they had already clinched the SEC regular season title. Down to the West region, I've got Maryland beating St. John's. Don't call it a homer pick. I'm not a Maryland fan. My brother is. I root against them, but I watch Maryland that much. I know that they're that good. Best starting 5 in the country. I gotta go with the Terps. Up to the East, this hurts me. Duke, Alabama, and I gotta go with Duke because this Duke team, I think, is that good this year. I was so against Duke last year. This is a different squad. Cooper Flagg compared to Kyle Filipowski. You're talking about a guy who can actually take a punch versus a little baby. So I love Duke this year, going on to the Final Four. And then finally, the Midwest, I do have Gonzaga and Kentucky, and I got the Zags. We mentioned this earlier. Gonzaga is a top 10 team in the country, metric-wise, and they're the 8th seed in the NCAA tournament. It makes absolutely no sense, but I got them moving on. At the end of the day, though, there's one thing that has been consistent basically throughout this entire college basketball season, really ever since the first week, and that's been Auburn and Duke and then everyone else, and that is my national championship. We have seen star teams really control this entire season. Auburn, led by Janai Broome. Duke, led by Cooper Flagg. It's the 2 guys in the National Player of the Year race. And at the end of the day, I have the experience winning in Janai Broome, the senior beating the freshman in Cooper Flagg. And I have the Tigers and Bruce Pearl taking home the national championship. Yes, they are the #1 overall seed, but I think that they are the best team in the country, best team in the tournament. Tahad Pettiford is a star as a freshman. I love this Auburn team.
Let's actually look at the correct Final Four.
I don't know about that.
Which is mine. Michigan State in the South. I got Michigan over Auburn. I don't even think Auburn gets there. You're not winning March Madness games if you're not coming in hot. You lose 3 of your last 4, which is why I have Michigan, who I believe is super strong. And then you got Florida and St. John's in the bottom left in the West. I believe Florida is the best. Florida coming out of that region. Clemson, Tennessee, Duke, Wisconsin. I got Michigan State moving on. I love the Spartans. I got Florida moving on. And then I got Duke, Wisconsin. That's a game I think people are interested about because I love Duke. And then I got Clemson and Tennessee coming out of the bottom left region in the Midwest. Pick a winner? Let's talk about it. Clemson over against Duke, Michigan State, Florida. But my national champion, we're going to have Duke versus Florida, and Florida is going to win it all. Chomp, chomp. Adam, Avin, I'm singing your praises, brother. Walter Clayton Jr., one of the best guards in college basketball. You have an unreal supporting cast. Todd Golden might just be maybe one of the more inexperienced coaches in college basketball, but I believe he has what it takes to take Florida to a Final Four and a national championship for the first time since 2000.
All right, interesting. Well, we've got no time to waste, so let's get right into our women's Final Four. First off, Spokane, #1, UCLA, LSU. I got the #1 overall seed moving on. Moving down, it's UConn. Can't pick against them in March. I got that matchup on the left side. Over on the right, South Carolina. Dawn Staley. Can't pick against her. Pretty simple. And then I got Notre Dame and Hannah Hidalgo. That is my Final Four. We go on to my national championship, and it's as simple as this. I cannot pick against Dawn Staley. She's won 2 of the last 3, 4 straight Final Fours. I got South Carolina taking home the national championship.
And for me, let's go to my women's bracket. I've got a little bit different than you, Adam. UCLA, LSU. I got the winner coming out of there is UCLA, and then USC, UConn. I got USC and Juju Watkins. South Carolina, Duke. I got South Carolina, but in that bottom right, I got Texas against ECU, and I got TCU moving on. But in my national championship, it's USC and TCU. Haley Van Lith against Juju Watkins. But what I believe is the utmost thing that stands on top of it all is USC's coach, Lily Gottlieb, felt disrespected this year. A team that won 28 games, went to the Big Ten championship, lost by just a few to a really good UCLA team. Juju Watkins, the best player in college basketball. Give me the Trojans to win it all in 2025, Adam.
I can't wait. Best time of the year. We've got basketball nonstop. Really started tomorrow with the first four. It should be a ton of fun. Big thanks to everyone who joined us on this show. Our incredible executive producer, Connor McGahan. Shout out to him. That's Carson Fowler. I'm Adam Gotkin. So long.